Alright, guys, so I said when I come back, we'll talk more about this. These theories around demons. So I can talk about what I've been taught theory-wise. Now, I don't really know, but if we're going back to that movie, The Pope's Exorcist, I don't think I've ever heard anybody specifically state that, demons can enter somebody through, because of the vulnerability of trauma. And in the movie's example with the little boy, having this mutism issue that stemmed from, he wasn't born with it. It happened after the traumatic event of his father being impaled in a car accident. And from that point on, he was mute. Up until after he got possessed by the demon and the exorcism occurred. I mean, yeah, spoiler alert for this whole thing. Yeah, up until after that occurred, the exorcism occurred, and the demon got out of him and out of the sister, and out of the priest. Oh my gosh. After the demon was just like out of everybody, then then the boy was able to talk. And I think the family left. I would have left earlier than that, but they waited until that whole thing. I would have left way earlier. I wouldn't even have moved in there. That place was creepy as hell. So yeah. Okay, so I'm trying to go way back. So in the Bible, the first time you see any kind of resemblance to what any resemblance to what Christians refer to as Satan is in the Garden of Eden. So this is chapter 2, I think, chapter 2 of Genesis. Enter Satan stage left kind of thing, but in the form of the serpent. And I'm trying to quote from memory. I don't even have a Bible in front of me, and I'm not going to pull it up on my phone because otherwise I'll start just reading through it and I get a little distracted. But I try to use my memory when it comes to the Bible, which, please, look these things up yourselves. Don't just trust in what I say. Look it up, study it. I've talked about these things before. Some of the ideas that I say might be something new because I do study it. I'll be studying it more later, but at the moment I have not studied this stuff in a while, months probably even. So I don't really know the specifics, but I believe the Bible says in chapter 2 somewhere where it talks about creation again. It's like a different account. So basically what happens at the beginning of chapter 2 is the seventh day of Sabbath was created. That wasn't created in chapter 1. So I was wondering why the Bible was broken up that way. I started this conversation the other day about okay, why do we think on things the way that we even do, right? Because I didn't write the Bible. I didn't write Genesis. I didn't break it up into chapters. I didn't choose it as a book to be the first book and all this kind of stuff. All that stuff came from some other place before any of us were even born. I'm assuming none of us were born way back when the Bible was canonized. If you were, shout out to you for living this long. But I'm joking. But I yeah. So basically, it says, the serpent. I think it says the serpent was crafty or knowledgeable or wise. I can't remember the word, but I think it was like the serpent was more crafty than any of the other creatures or something like that. I think there's a version of the Bible that says that in chapter 2 once it starts talking about the tree of knowledge of good and evil and all the rules about it, and it gets really confusing. But basically, I think that's how it's introduced. Now, where this becomes Satan, I don't know. That's something that we've been taught. I don't know from memory if it says, if God ever refers to the serpent as Satan. Maybe. I know in Hebrew, like, the word Satan that we use comes from ha-satan. Ha is the. It's like it's an article in Hebrew. So I don't know how to say anything. I guess if you're saying king, Melech is king, and then Ha would be the king. Ha Melech. But I mean, I'm just saying, just as an example, Ha, the H-A, or in Hebrew it's just the letter He. And in the Hebrew Bible it's Ha-satan. So Ha-satan, I don't know when Ha-satan gets introduced. I don't know. Like, I'm trying to think of, but Satan means adversary. So it's like the adversary of man. That's what Ha-satan means. It's like the adversary. And then we say Satan, or people even say devil. I don't know if the word devil is in the Bible. And then Lucifer is referred to a little bit, and then people say Lucifer means Satan. And then there's some other, theories that Lucifer has nothing to do, like Lucifer and the morning star. The morning star isn't Lucifer, and Lucifer is some other cast out angel that had his angels with him, but had a place in heaven all before earth and heaven and humans were even created, I believe. So there's this other theory that's not in the Bible, and I don't know where the theory is. The first I heard about it was because I was raised Adventist, and there's this Ellen G. White book called The Great Controversy, and in that book has the story of Lucifer and how he gets banned from heaven. You can find all of Ellen G. White's writings, I think all of them, on this EGW app, or just Google it. I think you can find free PDFs of all her stuff, and if people want to read it, go for it. I think there's also an audio version. I think YouTube, there's an audio version that somebody read on YouTube. I can't remember if I was reading that or something else, but anyways, with that, these are these theories about demons and Satan and devil and Lucifer. I don't know what is what. I don't know what is what. I don't know if they're all the same thing. I don't know. I've kind of been trying to understand this, because if you look at real world, like, I think a lot of times when you look at the Bible, it's important to look at real life. Like with any religious text, look at life itself and see, do you see any aspect of this in, life, with the human condition and just with socializing and being out and about? Like, do you see any of this kind of stuff? And previously I was kind of talking a little bit about ideas on, like, people being kind of unhinged in a church environment, or like that level of bitterness, and kind of what is, severe trauma and psychosis and that kind of stuff. Now, I'm not one to be like, okay, just because you have some kind of psychological disorder, you're demon possessed. I mean, that, to me, I don't know. But I did have a youth pastor that we kind of played with that idea, because he studied psychology too, and he basically was like questioning, is schizophrenia, is psychosis, because it's not only in schizophrenia. You can have psychosis in bipolar disorder. You can have psychosis with trauma. You can have psychosis with depression. You can have psychosis with anxiety. So you can have psychosis without being diagnosed as having schizophrenia. But people love to throw those terms, psychosis and schizophrenia, into all kinds of things, especially when it comes to serial killers in movies, or somebody who is jailed or acting weird, or somebody who is demon possessed in some kind of religious movie. You almost always hear those words like schizophrenia, psychosis, whatever kind of personality disorder they want to throw, like dissociative identities and all this kind of stuff. Like, you start hearing people throw those terms around. So I know the general public oftentimes thinks of those disorders as, like, you look at movies, like certain movies, and you're like, whoa, if that's what a person with schizophrenia is like, what the heck, it's like, but no, I mean, like, a lot of people with schizophrenia are just, they suffer in silence, and you would never know that they have schizophrenia. And then there's other people that, you see at the bus stops yelling and screaming and walking shoeless in the middle of the roads, taking off their shirt and, like, screaming at the sidewalk and stuff. And it's like they got some other thing going on. It's hard to tell if that's substance induced. It's hard to tell if it's not substance induced. It can get that bad without substances too. Most of the people I worked with, I think, had meth use at some point, and then that was the majority. And I'm only going by my San Diego examples of working in the clinical field for like 7 years of paid work. Most of the people that I met with did have some history of meth use sometime before they started experiencing psychosis symptoms. But also, they had poverty issues. They also had trauma issues. So it's hard to be like, okay, because they used meth, it led to this. And then a lot of people also said that the medications helped. Not everybody, but some people. For some people, I think often the medications did help. And then stress levels and other coping skills. There were things that did help. And then there were other people where it really didn't help at all. But a lot of times it did help. So it's like, to say that it's like some kind of demon possession or something, it's kind of interesting to me, because it's like, I don't know if that's what it is. But then often when you hear like stories in the Bible, like with Jesus and all these kind of things about how they talk about, like, it's kind of like, casting out spirits and all this kind of stuff. Evil spirits. Like, you hear different types of terminology being used, like evil spirits, Satan. Like, I think Jesus referred to, was it Peter? Before he was getting captured for crucifixion, and Peter was kind of, I think it was Peter who was just like, telling Jesus, like, maybe like, don't go through with this or something, trying to be like, don't. And then he's like, Satan, get behind me. You don't really hear Jesus calling people Satan that much. And I don't know. I mean, I'm jumping all over the place. So yeah, sticking to the movie at first. Like, if you think, well, okay, sorry. Let me go back a little bit, because I was trying to initially explain kind of like how Satan gets to Earth. According to Adventist tradition, Satan was the musical I don't know what the label is, but like some kind of musical. Lucifer was like the musical the head of music in heaven. And then I don't remember if it was the angel Michael that was at the right hand of God, or if it was Jesus at the right hand of God. Because in some Christian traditions, the angel Michael, like in Adventism, the angel Michael is considered to be Jesus. And I know I have a Pentecostal friend that says that they believe that Michael is not Jesus. Michael is an angel, just like Gabriel's an angel, just like Lucifer was an angel, but had a higher standing. Either way, this other angel has a higher standing than Lucifer, and Lucifer gets jealous and convinces a bunch of the other angels that, you know, want to follow him, and there becomes drama in heaven basically, and Satan gets banished with his evil ones. Lucifer gets banished, and so Lucifer and Satan are considered to be the same thing. But I believe his angel name was Lucifer. That's what I think that I was taught. And then I was also taught later on that, you know, the morning star is Lucifer. And then there's another theory that I read that says that the morning star refers to some other human being that had some kind of standing in society that was not Satan at all. It was actually that phrase, like, it's not like you see it all the time. Like, you don't see the morning star being referred to all the time in the Bible. I think it comes up once, if not a little bit more, but I think like once. I think. And then people are like, oh, well, that's Lucifer, you know, that's Satan. And so that's already my first question. Like, are all these even the same thing? You know, like, because I don't even know if they're all the same thing. But we're always told that they're the same thing. And then we're also told that sometimes we're told that they're not the same thing. So I don't really know. But let's just assume, if we assume that all the theories are correct, that we've mostly all been taught. Because I think most people who've practiced in a Christian religion or learned from it, we're taught that way. I need water. Yeah, most people were kind of taught to practice in that way. And so, or they were taught, you know, about Satan and Lucifer and the devil in that way, and that the demons are basically evil angels that all came with Satan because he was trying to create some kind of he was trying to like get others to not really believe in God, and saying that God wasn't fair, and he was jealous of this other angel or Jesus that God was preferring over him, or giving either preferential treatment, or was, you know, like Lucifer knew he couldn't get to that standing. He had a role of power, but he couldn't get to that standing, and so, you know, because he couldn't behave and all his other, you know, group was with him, they all got banished. That's not in the Bible. I don't know if it's in any text. I don't know. I don't remember if it's in the book of Enoch. I don't recall. I think it might be. It might be similar. There's a, I think, because Enoch has this experience, because there is in the Bible, when they mention Enoch, it doesn't really mention too much about him, but just that he walked with God. And a lot of times when they say somebody walked with God, a lot of times people take that in a theory to say, okay, this person walked with God, meaning that they saw God, or they had some experience where they went into heaven or something like that. Like, I don't really know, but you see that a lot with these chariots with the burning wheels of fire and all this kind of, like, some people just go to heaven or get there and come back or whatever, or see like a part of God, and then have like when Moses got like shiny, when he was like shining with light or whatever it was, that after he saw the back of the hem of like God's garment walking on the Mount Sinai or whatever, and he comes back and everybody's like he's glowing or whatever. It's like, okay, he didn't even really see God. And then they say that if people see God, they'll die. That's something I never understood. And then I think I haven't read the Book of Enoch in a long time, but I believe that story focuses on what is going on in heaven at some point before humans. I think humans didn't exist yet. And I believe this whole story of Lucifer in heaven and getting banished from heaven, I believe that happens before humans were created. But yeah, why the story's not in the Bible is a little confusing. But I don't think the Adventist religion is the only religion that has that belief, because I've heard it from other places too. And then, so I do think other people do believe that. I just don't know if they have it written anywhere or if it's just something they're told. But it's not in the Bible, which is already confusing for me. I'm like, why would that kind of story not be in the Bible? You know, if it's like the beginning, like, because the Bible starts with God creating the heavens and the earth. That's what it says. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. But it doesn't mention like, hey, God was already up there in heaven with all these other angels and this whole other system of living, and all these angels with all their positions in heaven and what they were doing up there worshiping God. But I believe the issue is with humanity, that humans have the choice. Now there's this book by Rob Bell called Sex God, and it talks about, you know, humans have this choice. Humans are, you know, part spirit, part animal. So we have an automatic side to us where we're able to kind of like be like animals and just do things just based on our biology. And then we have a spiritual side of us that's able to like worship and pray and create and do all these other things and make choices that way. Whereas angels, they have a choice to either follow God or be banished. We get forgiveness, and they don't, and that's, I guess, why the serpent was sent to the Garden of Eden, was to give, I was always taught, was to give humans a choice to decide between good and evil. I haven't even gotten into the good and evil. That's going to be like a whole conversation, but we're not going to get into that right now. But just the part that says, you know, how once Eve ate of the fruit, her eyes were opened. And so, yeah, so the first interaction with humans, you know, I guess Satan initially is having interactions with God and other angels, and then starts interacting with humans in the form of a serpent, a crafty serpent that, you know, first starts playing with Eve's mind about, you know, is that really what God said? Like, God said, don't go near the tree, or else you'll surely die. That's what Eve says. And he's like, Satan's like, well, he knows that you'll be like God, knowing both good and evil. And, you know, I was taught that within that sentence of saying, like, you'll be like God, that God, like Eve wanted to be like God. Therefore, since her eyes weren't open, she got tricked into this, because she wanted to be like God. But basically, Satan's twisting things, or if it's Satan, the serpent is twisting things, saying, you'll be like God. And so, if you want to be like God, then eat this, eat this, and you'll be like God. And she's like, I don't know. First of all, she says, don't go near it. And the serpent's like, did he say don't go near it? And then she's kind of like, I think what God should have said is don't talk to that serpent. But she starts talking to him, and he deceives her into eating the fruit, playing on her, as I was taught, playing on her desire to be like God. Maybe it was her desire to know good and evil. But did she know what evil was? She was kind of given instructions, like blind. It's almost like, I don't know if this is even equivalent, but if you've ever babysat or had a kid around you, and you tell them not to do something, and they don't really understand why, and they just ask why, and they want a reason, and a lot of times, parents and adults will shut them up. They'll be like, stop asking why. But it's like, if you don't give them a reason why, like a legit reason, they're gonna go and do that stupid thing, because they don't know. Like, people are like, don't do drugs, don't have sex, but it's like, if you don't tell them what might happen, even the first time you do something, you could still get pregnant. That's possible. And if you don't want to have a baby when you're first doing that, then, maybe it's best to not do it, because potentially you could have a kid, but a lot of people are like, don't have sex. Don't even kiss anybody, because then you'll want to have sex. It's like, okay, like, people take it so far, but then they don't want to explain anything. And, I think sometimes people need that explanation. But yeah, you see that a lot. You see all those things happening with the deception. And I don't know if there's really a way to really study and be able to tell, is Satan, is the devil, is Lucifer, is the serpent, are they all the same thing, or is it some other thing? And these demons, are they the fallen angels from heaven that got cast out with Lucifer before all this stuff with the humans getting created and all that? So, anyways, so when we look at this movie and we see that they're saying that this boy gets possessed because he's open to being possessed because of the trauma he's experienced, because of his vulnerability, I wouldn't say that that's not possible, but I would also say that I don't think I've heard something biblical like that, just because of the way I was always taught in the religion. And I'm not saying just because I was taught that way that it was right, but I'm just saying the way that I was always kind of taught about demon possession and things is usually like, oh, it's the person's fault. Like, the person who got possessed, they did something. They were dabbling with the Ouija board, or they were conjuring up spirits, or they were playing some kind of evil game that let this thing in, or they were meditating and opened up their mind for the demons. Like, they were actively doing something that let these demons in. They weren't just exposed and they weren't vulnerable and just exposed to it, and then the demons were allowed to come in, and then at such a strong point, in such a strong way that, like, even a priest who's used to doing exorcisms is used to letting these out. Now, something interesting that I find, and it's Hollywood, so I don't really want to say, this is going to sound really prejudiced and very insensitive, and But I mean, I love Catholic people, you know, so I have nothing against them. But in the movies, you always see it's the Catholic people that are dealing with these exorcisms. One of my family members mentioned that. Now, my family members, I don't think any of them are Catholic. They're Protestant, and some of them do have a little bit of a prejudice against Catholicism. Not Catholic people necessarily, but like the system of Catholicism. Just like, you know, some Catholics probably have something against Protestants too. So, you know, I was kind of raised around people saying stuff about, not too much about Catholic people, but about Catholicism. There was like a little bit of confusion, because you see a lot of Catholicism in movies and shows and stuff, but it's like, it's a whole world that I am not aware of. Like, it's got all these structures to it, and this Orthodox kind of angle to it that, like, a lot of Protestant Christians don't really know much about that. Like, you know, we don't, I can't remember the last time I've mentioned Mary for anything, you know, like, we don't pray to Mary about our sins, we don't go to confessions necessarily like that, we don't have all these kind of rituals and all these, like, prayers that we've, like, memorized. We don't really touch Latin or Greek or any, like, there's just, it's culturally completely different. Now, just because it's different doesn't mean that, like, it's wrong or whatever. But I do know the only thing I would say that's bothered me is that within my lifetime, I know that the Catholic Church has changed part of the Bible just because they've believed it. Like, I remember at one point, purgatory wasn't really like a thing, I don't think. Something changed with that. I remember when somebody was telling me about the fourth commandment changing into, they took out the remember the seventh day to keep it holy, and talking about the 6 days you do labor and all your work and all that kind of stuff. They took out that whole, that's the longest commandment, and they took it out. The Catholic Bible doesn't have it in there, and it's split into the other commandment about, like, honoring your father and your mother. So the fourth commandment doesn't even exist in there. So there's things like that where it's like, and we know in history that people have changed the Bible. So to have it even happening in modern day is, to me, it's exciting. Like, I don't hate on the Catholic Church. The only thing that if I had to say something about Protestant evangelicals, and then maybe the deeper Catholic Pope type people who are way up there, I feel like they have too much political control. That, to me, is more of a problem than, you know, what they do in their churches. But, you know, to me, it's a little bit of a problem. I feel like I'm not comfortable with it. That, you know, a lot of times churches are the ones that are behind a lot of legislation in our country, and that drives a lot of prejudice, honestly. Like, even if we look at slavery, if we look at a lot of rights that aren't equal, a lot of that is backed by religion. It's not necessarily backed, well, some of it's backed by Judaism. It's not really backed by, like, Hinduism or Islam or Buddhism or anything like that. It's usually Protestants and Catholics, you know, that are doing this. So that, to me, is more my issue, but that's not even on this topic, and that's the only issue I really have, is kind of like the prejudice that comes out of religion, and the lack of safe spaces, but that kind of goes hand in hand. But yeah, so all these questions about, like, what is going on in this movie, I found it weird. Oftentimes people are taught to use a lot of prayer. I was always taught, you know, using Jesus' name. Now, I don't know if they actually said the name of Jesus too much. I don't know if they said the name of Jesus. I mean, they might have said it in some of the prayers. Now, I'm not an exorcist, so I don't really know. Like, I'm just saying what I've been taught about anything related to, like, demons and possession and such. I'm gonna get driving because I'm burning up in his car. Alright. AC on, man. I'm melting in here. But yeah, so in the movie, you see this, you see that situation, right? You see the, like, how the kid gets possessed. And to me, that's just not something I've ever seen. I've not seen it in real life. I've not heard about it through religion or the church or anything like that. I've not heard about it in the field of psychology. I've not heard about somebody having some trauma symptoms, some trauma symptoms that are untreated, and that leading to some kind of like demon possession. Now, I have heard of people having trauma that doesn't seem to get treated by the doctors. I've seen people have like really complex trauma. I've seen, I've worked with clients who had definitely some complex issues going on that, it was hard to see results with them to where they were actually improving a lot. They weren't really improving that much. So I've seen that, but I don't know if I would consider it like demon possession. I don't know. I just don't know. Trying to combine psychology with, a religious thing. Because the way I think of it is like, okay, if this kid goes into a house, right? He didn't seem to be raised religious. I think the mom mentioned that she went to some kind of religious thing when she was younger, but it doesn't seem like she was raised like religious or anything. Like they were raised religious. And so I guess another question is, can somebody be demon possessed if they don't openly invite Satan to be in there with them? Like, how does somebody even get there? Is that even something that's possible? Because, like, again, I've mostly been taught that the way people get possessed is more of like a willful thing. It's like you opened yourself up to this and you took the risk of doing some kind of thing, whether it's meditation or yoga or some kind of like play with the Ouija board or hang out in the graveyard or do whatever it is. You took it upon yourself to go and do this thing that you knew was probably not the best of ideas and invited the demons in. Not necessarily, okay, you've experienced severe trauma, the doctors can't treat it, and then you're going to get more and more possessed with demons. That's not something that I've heard of. I also have never heard about having to call the demon by the name to be able to release it. I've heard about having to use the name of Jesus to release the demon. I've not heard about having to use the name of the demon to release the demon. And that to me was kind of like, I don't even know what to do with that, like something about that gave me a weird feel while watching that movie, because I don't know, it's just kind of my own questions based on how I was raised and my own beliefs based on how I was raised. When I look at, I'm not saying that the way I was raised was like the best knowledge, like it was the most accurate. I can't say that because I don't know. And, a lot of times we never really studied about like all this demon stuff because it's creepy. And I get a sense for it. I don't know how to explain it, and I'm not even going to try. But there's something that I kind of, I've talked about it before when it comes to like horror movies, thriller movies. Certain types of content I just naturally stay away from because of how it makes me feel. And there's certain certain ways that I feel that I'm like, this is not territory that is something I'm either ready to be diving into or that I need to be diving into. And I can sense it. It's like a sense that I get that's like, yo, keep your eyes wide open and, don't blink kind of thing. Just kind of like, watch out for yourself. Maybe I'm susceptible. I don't know. I never understood what it was, but ever since I was even young, I've noticed it. And I don't know. I mean, there's stuff like that that's like, I think a lot of us, like, I've had a lot of friends who have like seen like otherworldly things, whether that's like demons or ghosts or spirits or aliens, all kinds of things that they've seen and witnessed, and they know that when they were younger they had this kind of sense, and they probably do now too, but all of us are so busy we just don't really tune into it like that. But I've noticed for myself that I've had this kind of sense about things, and so usually when I see those things creeping out in like my entertainment, I am very, very intrigued. That's one way to explain it. I get very intrigued by it. But I think there's a part of me that knows that I get really intrigued to a point that maybe I should not dive too deep into it. I've dove into things that I've definitely had experiences almost directly after them, to where I don't explain it with like all the like sleep paralysis and all these kind of things. Like, people want to call it what they want to call it, but I mean, I know what I've seen, I know what I experienced, and I've never had sleep paralysis before or after that point. And so, and usually I don't think sleep paralysis comes with some kind of a figure in your room with you. Like, usually I don't think that happens. Am I right when I say that I've never had sleep paralysis but that one time? Maybe it happened another time. I think it might have happened another time, but it was also a really weird experience. But yeah, yeah. So anyways, I have my own beliefs and kind of ways of kind of like thinking about this kind of stuff. But I was never taught to say a demon's name. To me, that sounds opposite of what a religion would teach. That it would be, don't say that demon's name. That's my opinion. This is my opinion. But I feel like I was raised in a religion that's very skeptical of Hollywood movies. Like, you guys have seen, I talked about that, what was it called? That Hollywood, it was called something Hollywood, where one of my previous pastor friends who worked in Hollywood, because, we're up in LA, so, like, there's a lot of us, who are very, into that, but just kind of all the Illuminati stuff that has to do with Hollywood and with these movie studios, with their there's a lot of stuff that in movies you don't really catch. Kind of just like with music, like a lot of rock music, metal music has a lot of like religious undertones to it. A lot of the names, like even the name Black Sabbath for like, Ozzy's band and all that. Like, there's bands like that you're just like, why would they choose that name? Or like certain songs by Tool, like they have like biblical verses and stuff in it, and you're just like, okay, like I'm not saying they shouldn't, I'm just saying like when things become mainstream and really big, I do keep my eyes open about it. And I'm like, because I was taught that like this kind of stuff, like being so deeply raised in a religion, you see it when you have your eyes open. You see it, like even in like certain shows, like even if in the show, I think it was a movie, like in Superman, like one of the Call L, I don't remember what Call L is in Superman, but that means voice of God. And is Call L the bad guy, or is it the planet? I can't remember what it is in the movie specifically. Like, I don't remember exactly what Kal-El is in the actual movie, but it's not the voice of God. And so it's like things like that you're like, okay, you'd have to literally know Hebrew to know that, because it just sounds like a word, but it's like, why would they make that the name, you know? And there's all these movies about all kinds of like demonic magic kind of stuff that you're just like, how come nobody sees this? You know what I mean? But if you're someone who was raised studying the Bible, you kind of notice it in a lot of mainstream media. You see a lot of stuff, and I always look for what's a point of deceit, what's a point of deception in some of these movies. I think that that's something I wanted to look into in this movie is, you know, what are they saying about psychology and religion, and then what are they saying about, you know, what is this thing about like the name of a demon? Like, I don't think that makes sense that to call it out, you have to know its name and you have to call it out by name. I was always taught that you're supposed to use the name of Jesus, not use the name of the demon. But I don't know. I'm also not an exorcist, so I don't really know. But there's stuff like that I'm like, you know, keep your eyes open. You know, if you believe in that kind of stuff, it's like, you know, just be careful when you're watching it and when you're listening to it and diving into it. It's like, some of the stuff is a little tricky, and I always think that when something becomes mainstream like that, they do it because they want to get your attention, because they're trying to trick you. And so I always appreciate it, but it's also another thing that I've noticed, that they never really have Bible movies anymore about like the actual Bible. Like, they used to have movies about Paul and Peter and, you know, David and all these movies, but now they have like the fictional versions of these movies. Like, what if this was like that movie The Chosen, like that series The Chosen? It's like, it's not completely based on the Bible. It's better than some movies are, but there's a lot of these movies that it's like, if you don't really know the Bible very good, there are people out there that are playing with it, you know, which is, you know, let them, you know. I think it helps for the people who like to study it to kind of have something more to study. It actually intrigues me, and I like it. Obviously, I can just create content about this stuff all day and then want to actually study more about it, but for like the historical perspectives and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I think that's most of what I was questioning with that movie, was kind of like, what on earth is going on here? But if you're into those kind of movies, you might like it. I'm not even into those kind of movies, but I really wanted to watch something that was kind of based in religion. Shout out to the Catholic Church, man. You know, I'm pretty sure they weren't unaware of this movie, you know, but I'd like to hear other people's opinions on it, because I'm like, these are the types of things I'm like, yeah, I like to talk about this kind of stuff. You know, it creeps me out, but I'm like, I love it, and it's like, it's topics that Christians will talk about, non-Christians will talk about, just people who are curious with like otherworldly things, they'll talk about it. You know, I like stuff that's like approachable, even if it is about evil or whatever. I like it when things are approachable that have to do with religion and spirituality and psychology, and just mix it all in, and I am just happy, you know. I'm very happy with this movie. But yeah, now that I've spoiled it all, if you haven't watched it, go watch it. I gotta eat lunch because I'm hungry, and I'm back home. But with that, thanks for listening.